the time, it's because you're so driven on cortisol that it causes that adrenaline effect, and then that causes the conversion, and that causes why that food may not work for you at this time, right? Because they're still low temperature, low pulse, they're still running off of stress hormones. So those,
Okay, so histamine foods.
yeah,
And
that's what
and
people.
why would people say that? Because they have
That's
high cortisol levels, correct? Is basically what it comes down to, and they're not eating frequently enough, so they're having these responses to, like, their metabolism is kind of trying to get going. Is that why you would start producing that?
So
Uh,
this is the thing, is like everyone outside in the world who doesn't go deeper into the physiology are getting caught up in like certain things. Like we teach people, okay, pay attention to how your food reacts to you, right? So
mhm.
now people are starting to look at foods, like they look at diets, they look at calories, they look at
Right.
anything, and they start saying, oh, this food isn't good for me. But the problem is, it's not the food as much as what's going on in the body and how it's reacting in your body. So if we look further, look and see why that food is there. That food is actually good for you. It's the fact that, OJ and gelatin and meat and milk are really good for you. It's just the same reason why people are lactose intolerant, right? We got these same things about not understanding the cortisol levels are so high in their body that when that food comes in, they're having a problem with it, and then they avoid the food instead of realizing that their stress in their body is so high, and you have to take it slow, or you have to start eliminate that food for a little while but bring it back in, not be like this is bad food
Like
or this is
never
the
eat it
problem.
again. Yeah. Well, I see that happening a lot with people around dairy right now, especially. Like, I've met so many people most recently that they're just like, I don't eat dairy because kind of they've been told that it's not good for them, or like it's a high food sensitivity kind of food, and or histamine kind of food. So they just, without question, they just take it out of their diet. And in my opinion, that's like really not always a good idea because it's so nutrient dense. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's what people are being told. But if you just, I don't know, you and I have been down that road before of like eliminating food, and you just keep eliminating and eliminating. There's like nowhere to go eventually. So I think, like,
Yeah,
really you should be able to eat all foods is what I learned. But it's like you said, I think it's that response, that histamine response. And
that's the thing. Like we're going to have go back to that 80/20 rule where people are going to have to say, hey, you got to pay attention to what's happening. Okay, so did I have a stressful day? What did I fuel myself enough? And what fuel did I have? And so, yeah, you're going to get some reaction to something. Every day is going to have something that's not going to maybe work totally, but it's just about like, knowing how often and how long you want to do it. So if you're just denying that the wine is affecting you, then that's a problem, right? If
right,
you're afraid to having wine, that's a problem.
yeah,
Because, either way, you're looking at it as, this thing that affects you, where,
yeah, I see. So that's the issue, really. Yeah, totally. I agree with that.
one of the things I'm noticing about people who are either done Ray Peat's work, got caught up in the diet aspect of it and said, "Oh yeah, it's a diet. Let's drink orange juice, 12
Right.
gallons of orange juice, 12 gallons of milk, or and
Yeah.
then their
Well,
temperatures never changed. They got worse on it. They gained weight.
well,
That's
that's
a
my
big.
question. Do you think a lot of people that do that, like, do too much sugar too quick? Is that what you think? Why you think they
Yeah, I
get
mean,
that reaction? Yeah. Okay.
well, we all have a mentality that, find the answer quick. Make sure you know what you're, like give me the quick and easy, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think if you think about how frustrating it is to help yourself when you're in distress, and then you find something and you try it and then you jump all the way in and then it doesn't really work for you, then you're kind of upset, right? So there's a
Right.
lot of backlash because people didn't really understand how to take it slow with the information that Ray was giving. And then they gave authority away by saying, okay, let me just go ahead and believe this is going to fix me, when you have to do a lot more work. The temperature and pulse is important. There's a lot of things that you have to kind of taking effect about a, every day looking to see what your intake is, because you're going to have to know what day it didn't work for you, right? Like when people don't like to journal, but the thing is that it has to be a part somewhere in this, because you can convince yourself all day long, I did this and this. And then when you have something that's tracked you, you can go, oh, I see how my mind kind of got me believing that I had done something when I didn't.
Right. Even as simple as like I've noticed with myself, like I there might be one macronutrient that I'm really going crazy on because and I didn't realize it. Um,
Yeah, we get
yeah.
into those fetishes,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like, I like it so much, let's eat more of it.
Yeah. Especially if you've been cutting your carbs out. I remember when I did that a while back and then got back to carbs and I was like it was like a heavenly experience having carbs back in my life again.
Right, and so you're
But
constantly saying, "Oh, yeah, we can eat carbs." It's
yeah.
like I like, I like to try having some bread every once in a while, especially that's sourdough or something.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I can tell, like, it's just way too much. Just back off.
Yeah, you know when you've
So,
done a little too much. Yeah, and I have that. That's me with wine. Like I really love wine and I don't want to totally cut it out, but I know when I've had too much. I know when I'm getting to that place. My digestion starts changing. I start getting a little bloated. I'm like, okay, things aren't working the way they're supposed to be. So I need to
yeah, I
back
mean,
off. Yeah.
when you're trying to crawl out of bed because you're like tired and,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
stuff like that, that doesn't work either. Right. I get
Yeah.
it. It was, like, I still connect to other people who are still doing the Ray Peat stuff, people who have then drifted off from Ray Peat stuff.
Mhm.
Like, we talked about um, people thinking PUFAs are important and why PUFAs you need them, and I think it's all relative to making ourselves understand that everything's can be a good and a bad.
That's
It's
true.
just, if
Yeah.
we're gonna do what we're talking about, integrating, we got to give ourselves the keys to know how to try a different either method or a different way without throwing the baby out with the water, the
Yeah.
bathwater.
I agree.
Because
Yeah.
Ray's work is really accumulation of, like, Rhoda Barnes, Hans Sele, Georgie St. George. These are beyond him. He just found it and found how he helped lots of women with lots of their issues, and by accident mainly, and then started to help them and guide them, and then had great results. And so we just have a great source that has some information. It's our issue about how we indoctrinate it and make it a so-called diet, which we
Right.
don't need to. It's not a diet. It's a slow. If Like, I was telling a friend of mine who just started it, and she said, just in the 2, 3, actually a week time, the first 2, 3 days, she realized how much it affected her so well that she's like sold herself on it in a way that she's just going to slowly take it in. And I'm like, that's why this book is so great, because she literally brings in this um, easier way to take the information. She kind of helps funnel it through.
Mhm.
It's not, it's no, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but it is actually the better way versus, you and I remember trying to take all that information, trying to read Ray's work, and we
Oh
were
yeah. Totally
like,
overwhelming. Like
it's
it
like you
was
went into a doctorate and just like
yeah.
forgot how to read or something,
It's
It's like,
exactly that's exactly how I felt. Yeah, it was very very it's like wrapping your mind around a whole nother concept that we had not been taught basically. Yeah. Or
yeah, and
maybe
then I,
going back to because I remember in college like the in exercise physiology like actually carbs were an important component of athletics. Like you needed those for energy. That was an essential like fact. I mean, it's just but for
right,
some
like,
reason we
we're
don't,
never
yeah.
ever not going to be kind of in a situation where carbs aren't going to be important, because if you're an athlete, it's vital, because you're in a stressed situation where you need calories quickly.
Mhm.
If you're not even an athlete and you're in health issues, you need carbs quickly. Like, you've got to get, like, past these dogmas where carbs have been deemed wrong, right? It's
Right.
that kind of part of me thinks, wait, we got to, you know, when we've like taken a stand on something, then we kind of have a problem looking at it and saying, wait a minute, there's also a good side of it too. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, and then I think, you also have to look and your this is what I had to look at for myself is like where is my body? What is the state of my metabolism right now? And like I think some people are starting at a point where they can't metabolize sugar. Like they're not able to do it. And then that's why they think that they can't have stuff like milk or orange juice or those things because they're actually not really able to assimilate it very well. So, and that's because, like what you said, I think that's because of the cortisol levels. I think it kind of all relates back to that, right? Because
right. I
especially,
mean, stress hormones are in your body. They're going to shut down certain things because it's on a survival mechanism.
right.
I can't find where it is, but I remember reading something about like the reason why people have lactose intolerant problems is the same thing, is the serotonin levels in the gut have exceeded the amount. So you get, what we talked about with leaky gut syndrome, impermeability of the gut, inflamed of the villi, all that stuff we learned
Mm-hmm.
was true. It's what causes H. pylori. It's all that stuff, but it's really fundamentally that the stress hormones are too high, creates the increase of serotonin, which creates the irritated gut, which then creates the inability to digest. So that protein in that milk is so hard for the body to digest, and then that's why they do lactose intolerance. So they take that out and say, oh, well, I can drink it without it. But then what they're really just getting is a supplementation from the sugar part, right? I mean, we all have sugar. We can all take sugar. It's just how much when you're in a stressful situation, right? And how well your digestion's going.
Right. So you won't be able to do as much when you're really stressed out or you're not eating very frequently.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Much. Sometimes people can't have a hard time interpreting Ray Pete's work. And sometimes like he'll say something, but then I mean, I feel like the way he talks and the way he writes is not a literal way. It's more of like kind of like leading you down a path to figure it out yourself in a way, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I think it's hard for people to understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is good because we all need to be our own authority. And I think one of the things that he really recognized was that self-helplessness about not being able to figure it out. And, he doesn't want to be, the guru either. He's like,
Right.
this worked for these ladies. This is how I did it. This is how you can try to work it for yourself. And, he's very humbled to say, he doesn't know if something doesn't work. And because it seems to be up front, the worst fear is people worrying about having to gain weight to heal. So maybe we could talk
Yeah,
about that.
that is a good thing to talk about. That's kind of in the back of my mind too because that is something that I don't know that many people are willing to go through. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so if we can find ways to minimize that
Yeah.
for people, that's kind of where, like I learned to be patient with the gain of the weight because I did it too fast too soon, or I just did it. I didn't have a conscious like knowing of what was going to be the effect of doing it the way I did it.
Uh huh.
And I think that when I want to help other people, all I want to do is say, look, you don't have to do it the way I did it. And I'm okay with the way I did it. But now I want to kind of share with you, like, here's what's happening to me now because I'm losing the weight that I gained, but I'm still really healthy feeling. Like I have energy.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
have
that's
cold hands
so
and feet anymore,
interesting.
which
Yeah.
is which is really what I notice a lot of these people I talk to, are still experiencing. Like I haven't had those syndromes in a long time. And,
That's awesome. Yeah, that's
yeah.
huge because it's funny that you mentioned that too because I was at a get together the other night with some coworkers and they're all physical therapists and trainers, and there's some really in shape people, and the people who seemed kind of more muscular were getting cold. We were up on this rooftop, like, and it was open, and there was like a fire in the middle, and I was totally fine the whole time, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and all these people, it was really surprising that these people were getting cold or feeling cold because I didn't feel cold at all. I don't know. It's a very playful group. So we were showing, like, they had pulled up this guy who was a bodybuilder who used to work there, and they were showing a picture of him, and showing, you know, who he was, and I hadn't met him before, so I was just and so we were talking about bodybuilding, and so I have done a bodybuilding competition, so I showed my bodybuilding picture.
All right.
But the funny thing is, it's like I look back on that and I remember how that was such a struggle. I was pretty unhappy. Like my mood was like I was depressed and had really no energy. And I was basically starving myself, but I looked fantastic. And so people look at me at that, and they were like, "Wow, like you look amazing." And I'm thinking to myself, like, "Yeah, but the cost was like," and but why do we think like why do we get tricked into thinking that looks so amazing? You know, now I feel like you said, like similar to what you said, it very, you know, my mood's much better. I have more energy. I don't get, I mean, my temperature is regulated much better. And I remember when I was in that state, I had to wear like sweaters to go to the grocery store and stuff. I couldn't leave without like a jacket in the summertime, you know?
Yeah, I think mainly what I keep thinking is that people are getting so lost. It's like photoshopping an image, right?
Hmm.
Because people are so trained to see the so-called beauty, what we actually forget is like certain things aren't so beautiful in terms of if we knew all of what it costs to get there.
Yeah.
Like it's like okay, it's like diamonds, right?
Hmm.
Diamonds have such a encoded belief in us that we are to get married and have this big rock on our hands, and the clear and the clarity and all the rating of the diamond is important, and then it's so beautiful on your hand, and it, you carry it around and it's so beautiful and people envy you because you're not, who knows, but the story is, you get that big rock on your finger, right? Or you get the diamonds on your ears or wherever. It means status, it means whatever. But then if you started to unravel where diamonds come from, what it means to other people who have to dig these things up, and all the story behind it,
Yeah, the
we probably
energy
wouldn't.
behind it.
We wouldn't highlight it as a great thing to have,
Right.
because it's like that's why they call it bloodstones, right? Because they're literally out of the blood of other people, and we're walking around thinking that's the greatest thing in the world. Where in actuality, we think a hard fit body is the best thing you can have, all these muscles and everything. But if we really understood, like where people like you have been down those roads and sacrificed to get that part of you, you have a whole story about how freaking painful it was, or it wasn't a great feeling inside you. So there's this whole like we've been conditioned to buy the product, not know how the product got there.
Yeah, and the cost is accepted because we're supposed to struggle, right? The struggle is like romantic. It's romanticized, and in the suffering, I guess, too, in some ways. But there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, about a muscular body. I just think that, like, are you happy? Are you feeling good? Is all your physiology working properly? Look at all the other aspects of that, like your emotional health, your how you heat and cool your body. But those things are not, I guess, talked about as much as or even considered. So it's all about, like, when I listen to other fitness stuff or podcasts, it's about like more aesthetics or it's about function. It's like one of the two. You have those two schools of thought, and it's about brain function too. But then beyond that, like, nobody's really talking about hormonal balance as much. I mean, I feel like that's out there, but in a different way. So
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I think probably the product of where branding came from or any kind of advertising comes from.
Yeah.
We have an emotional attachment to, if you're fat, it means you're lazy. If you're fit and have lots of muscles, that means you're a go-getter and you're disciplined and all these good things, right? The traits are defined by our emotional attachments. And if we recognized other cultures, there are other things that kind of show up that are accepted outside of that. Like we just kind of narrowed our mindset into believing that a fit body means that you're successful, you've got everything together, or the same kind of, or you're just, in a better place, and it's not necessarily so.
Right. Yeah, and maybe our definition of what a fit body is could change. I mean, I think it's definitely changed in my lifetime. I don't remember that any of the chiseled like body look, the abs, the arms, especially on women, that was not desired when I was younger for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like just maybe from the movie industry, but possibly. So
Yeah, I
could
mean, you think
yeah.
about all the superheroes that are coming out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We talked about Wonder Woman last time, and then I remember, how much they talked about how much she worked out for that role and
Oh
how much
right.
important
Yeah.
to that. You got a whole other aspect of life in terms of, you know, even like Wolverine, he talked about his diet, lots of meat and lots of work and the I'm really bad at names of who these actors are, but the guy who did 300, right? They started a
Oh
whole
yeah.
program where, train like the 300 cast, or something
Right.
like that. But the reality is that, you're in the gym 6 hours a day, you're every day, you're leaning out because on camera, they want you to look buff. And
Right.
so, but you don't hear like, I remember, you don't hear the backstory, but it also reminded me of like when Tom Hanks did the role for the guy who was living on an island, the survival movie he did. Um,
Oh, it the Castaway.
yes, Castaway,
Yeah.
and how much weight he had to lose for that,
Oh
and
right.
how it
Yeah.
affected him. And then I think McConaughey, when he did his role, where he had to lose all that weight, like all these actors have been kind of showing up in roles to, suit the role, but then they have problems. And now it's
Right.
reminding me of uh, Princess Leia. What's her name?
Carrie
Uh,
Fisher.
Carrie Fisher,
Mm-hmm.
right? She was supposedly on, they say there's certain types of
Am-
drugs,
am-
and she,
amphetamines or something. Yeah, she was like on. Well, I don't know for sure, but that's what I heard. Yeah.
and then she was also training to be fit for those roles, and so people say that that actually contributed to her heart attack or whatever she had. Um,
Yeah. That's what
and
I heard
so,
too, and because they asked her to lose weight.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if we now know the stress that we had trying to lose weight when you can't, your body can't lose weight when it's not healthy. Like that is the key
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Yeah. That's a great statement. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
if you have that kind of knowing that, okay, I'm not losing weight. Why? Well, because maybe your body's not healthy. What do you mean it's not healthy? Well, have you checked your temperature and pulse? What is that baseline telling you? If you're 97, 96 in the morning, you're not at your optimum temperature. That means your gut's not working, your liver's having a hard time, your thyroid's having a hard time. These things are what are the underpath that you need to have to understand where you're going. Like you just, we just don't have that knowing. And so I think with her book and what we know, we're seeing like this is where the baseline has to be. You can't lose weight until you're healthy. Like just
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
I would never have lost the weight I've lost already when I had cold hands and feet. Like there was just no, my body was telling me, no, I can't do this. This is not, you can, but you might die. That's up to you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's that risk because even I think it probably becomes more of a risk the older you get, is my guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Or trying to ask, if our cars get old, right? They
Yeah.
run and run, and we're supposed to keep them up with oil and all these other things to kind of keep them going for a long time. Then why do we expect trying to rev the engine like a Ferrari when it's kind of like not made to be that way,
Yeah.
right?
Especially, and that's why I love talking to you about the how women change after a certain age. Like we literally our bodies change because of a hormonal fluctuate. I mean, there's a difference in how we're producing our hormones after. I mean, I guess it's after 40 is kind of the average, right? But I think
Hmm.
it may be even earlier now. But
Well,
yeah, we
we're
have to
pushing it.
consider that. Yeah, totally. But we have to consider that, and we have to consider, that we have different needs than men do, and we may need more carbohydrates actually as women to produce those hormones and convert, to the hormones to make progesterone to offset the estrogen. So that's what the hopes are, the information we're putting out there, we can start getting people to think a little bit more about that.
Hmm.
um, Not to make it more complicated, but just to say, hey, these are just considerations. And I feel like what's out there right now, like there might not be as many options for women as they go through this stage of life. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Anyway.
I definitely agree. It's all coming down. The trickle effect is happening, and it's a keep putting the information out there, and if we can do it, everybody else can do it too.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too.